Well, hello and welcome to today's episode of the Power of Your Mind podcast. You're listening to episode number 119. I'm Victoria Gallagher, Law of Attraction hypnotist and #1 best-selling author of the book Practical Law of Attraction, Align Yourself with the Manifesting Conditions and Successfully Attract Your Desires. And I'm also the founder of HipTalk.com and HypnoCloud apps, which gives you access to over 500 hypnosis recordings right in the palm of your hand. So be sure to download that app from the app stores. So today I am really excited about the guest that I am introducing. It's Doug Vermeeren. Douglas Vermeeren is an entrepreneur and the producer and director of the new film, How Thoughts Become Things, which you can find out more about on howthoughtsbecomethings.com, which explores how people can make their dreams become a reality. The law of attraction, using the law of attraction. He's going to discuss for us why, when it comes to COVID-19, social unrest, and other problems that we face today, our fears create more challenges for us than the problems themselves. Is that the truth or what? Vermeeren says these days we see a lot of people becoming discouraged, depressed, fearful, and we can see how fear has taken hold of people. And the problem with that is that what we think about, we bring about, and what we dwell upon in our thoughts becomes who we are and what we experience. And in his new film, Vermeeren expands on the concepts that were discussed in the 2006 movie, The Secret, bringing back the top thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and cast from that movie. A lot of personal development focuses on the idea of do it, get busy. And he says the first step is not to do it, but to become, to be it. When we are the right thing internally, then we will do the right thing. And this is so in alignment with what I think about. And so, his books are Know Your Audience, Guerrilla Millionaire, Personal Power Mastery, and he can be found on douglasvermeeren.com. And so today, Doug is going to be sharing his insights on, do your fears in a crisis create more problems than the crisis itself? So welcome to the show.
Hey, it's good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being on the show. I am so excited to get to know you and understand like how did you get involved in creating this movie? I mean,
Wow.
this movie has been in my face a lot. And, as a busy entrepreneur myself, I haven't taken the 90 minutes to actually watch it. I'm afraid to say, and I keep thinking I'm going to, and it's like, oh, one more thing. So now I have that much more reason to watch it after talking to you today.
Well, isn't that funny? Because isn't that what John Lennon said? He said, life is what happens to us while we're making other plans. So yeah, it's easy to get busy. That's just the life of an entrepreneur. But
Yeah.
I do hope you watch the film. And, I think that's actually a really interesting place to start, because you said, how did I come up with the film? And the truth is, probably like most people, in 2006, as the movie The Secret came out, it really was the beginning of a conversation for a lot of people. And to be quite frank, you couldn't turn on the TV or the radio or walk down a bookstore aisle without seeing something in regards to the law of attraction. It just seemed to be everywhere. But one of the things that I think was kind of a bit of a maybe mystery for a lot of people is, you remember in the film The Secret, Mike Dooley says, thoughts become things. And he's always
yes.
dramatic, right? Like, I love
Yes.
him. He's so awesome. But my question as I saw that was like, how? Right? Like, what's the how? And so as I kind of looked at that question of how thoughts become things, obviously that's what led to the beginning of this movie. But I think one of the things that's really kind of a big lesson from that, something that jumped out for me, is that we often focus on the thoughts, okay? So we say, I need to think more positive. I need to overcome my negative thinking. I need to beat my fears. I need to have more self-confidence. I need to, control my thinking. So that's one thing we spend a lot of time talking about. But we also, let's be honest, are focused on the things. What can I get? Like that Ferrari, that new house, the relationships, all these kinds of things, right? And so we're really focused on that. But the more that I studied this subject, the more that I found that those are actually less important in this equation than the other two words, which are the how and the become. The how is really, again, the strategy of how we really find the patterns of our thinking to serve us. Like how are we, not controlling, because that's a different word, but how are we recognizing what we really want to accomplish? But the other side of that equation is probably the biggest one. It's that word become. In fact, I was recently sitting with Bob Proctor when we were talking about this idea of how our thoughts do become things. And you remember in The Secret that he talked about that everything vibrates at a various frequency, like everything around us is vibrating at a frequency. And if you want to attract those things into your life, you need to change the frequency at which you are vibrating. And so the whole essence of this, almost kind of like what you alluded to in the beginning, it's not really about getting busy and doing a to-do list, right? You know, you've heard this, if you can do it, you can have it, right? But the truth of the matter is it goes even deeper than that, which starts with the be, the become.
Right.
And you'll remember, kind of like, if we look at that word become, you know, Jim Rohn once said that if you win the lottery and you want to keep it, you need to learn to become a millionaire fast. And so I think this is really the essence of how do we get to that next level? It's really understanding the changes that we need to make.
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. One of the concepts, you know, and Bob Proctor, I met him many years ago. He's a big advocate of the breakthrough seminar that I took many, many years ago called Size Seminars. And one of the concepts that opened my eyes for the very first time to the concept that you're talking about is the concept of be, do, have. Because so many people, you know, they have that in reverse, you know, well, once I have this, then I'm going to do this, then I'll be happy. But it actually, like you say, you know, you have to be the thing, you have to be in the frequency that you would be in if you had that thing, or however it is that you think that that thing is going to make you feel. You need to be it.
Well, I think that's a great point. In fact, if we're looking at this idea of what we are going to become, you know, it's interesting. One of the things that I'm known for, when I was 19, I started doing interviews with the world's top achievers, and I got to more than 400 of the world's top achievers. In fact, the media calls me the modern day Napoleon Hill.
I love it.
One of the things that was startling to me as I went out and tried to connect with these world's top achievers, I realized that I didn't really have a true definition of what success was. I didn't understand what that was. So I was asking the questions, but I didn't understand. And one of the things that I found is a lot of times, you know, right now people define success as getting clarity. And the truth is if we are specific and clear, it becomes attainable and near. It's just that simple, right? A problem well defined is half solved. But the problem with that equation is that it's missing part. And that's how do we really feel about what we're trying to do? You know, Stephen Covey once said that many people climb the ladder of success only to find that it's leaning against the wrong wall. And so oftentimes I think maybe there's even another way to look at that. Like we've heard this idea that says that happiness is a choice. You've heard that, right? I want to say that I think that's incomplete.
Okay.
Right? Because a lot of people make choices based on immediate gratification, or they make choices based on, you know, incorrect data or whatever it is. In fact, I just spoke at a prison not too long ago, and there were people in there that had made choices, which at the moment they thought they were doing the right thing, and it didn't work. So happiness is not just making a choice. It's also being pleased with the consequences that arrive from those choices.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And if we make choices that give us more freedom and possibility, then that's going to help us to feel more satisfied and more excited in our life, right? So we need to consider that consequences are always a part of that equation.
Yeah. So before we dive into like the content of today, you had mentioned that, you know, you're kind of like the Napoleon Hill of today because you've interviewed a lot of these amazing, successful people. So can you share with our audience, like, you know, who some of those people were? And I think you also mentioned to me earlier that this isn't your first movie. You know, there's actually been
just the fourth movie, actually.
Yeah, it's your fourth movie. So yeah, tell us a little bit about that background.
Yeah, a little bit about my journey, that as I've, kind of gone out there, I've had a chance to connect with some really high level individuals, business leaders, celebrities, athletes, people who won Academy Awards, Grammy Awards, you name it. And then obviously some of the top thought leaders. And obviously, we could throw around a bunch of names, everybody from the founders of FedEx, Nike, Reebok, the Avita Group, Christian Dior, Ted Baker, Uber. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on and on. But I want to say that I think some of the most interesting interviews were from people that nobody knows,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that are really, like, how do we call them? The silent billionaires, people who, aren't on the cover of Time magazine, so to speak. But there are a few that stand out as being really strong mentors to me. In fact, one of my favorite almost became like a grandpa to me. In fact, there's a few that became like a grandpa to me. But Frank McGuire, who's one of the co-founders of Federal Express, the former VP of marketing of all of KFC and American Airlines. Brian Smith, who was the founder of UGG Boots. People like Dennis Waitley, who wrote, so many amazing books on the power of positive psychology and the power of the psychology of winning and so forth. Bob Proctor's another one, etc. So, as you can imagine, being exposed to these individuals. Okay, so here's something interesting to think about. When we talk about how thoughts become things, many people talk about their programming, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they say, as a child, I was programmed to believe this about me, and that's why I fail. And they immediately go to their excuses, and they, unfairly blame the environment that they were raised in, whether it's their family or their community or whatever it is. But we've heard the saying that says we become like the 5 people we spend the most time with. Not spent, spend. That's present tense.
Currently,
And
yes.
so, right. And so the thing I think a lot of people forget is that your programming is not yet complete. In other words, we are constantly in the process of being programmed. And for me, as I've surrounded myself by some of these big high-level thinkers, I've noticed and recognized that my own programming changed. Here's something interesting. You've heard it said that your net worth is determined by your network, right?
Right.
But when people talk about net worth, everybody talks about money, right? And that's the first place they go. But I want to suggest that if we take that word net and worth and divide it into 2 words, we have net and worth, worthwhile, worthy, things that we value. So I'm going to suggest that before you can receive your net worth, you receive a new set of values. What do you really find valuable? What do you find interesting? And the people that you surround yourself with, proximity determines the possibilities, right? We begin to see things different by who we hang out with. And one of the other things that I also think is important that most people don't understand is that network also determines your safety net. So in other words, the problems that you want to solve, the things that you want to create in life, the support that you have is often determined by your network. And I found for me personally that as I surrounded myself with a higher level of person or a high level of thinker, I started seeing better solutions than what I was trying to do on my own, right? In fact, here's something interesting. One of my mentors told me this. I was thinking about starting a business, and I'll never forget. I wrote out a business plan, and I said, would you meet with me for lunch? And I want to share this idea with you. Now, to be quite frank, I was probably approaching it from the wrong motives. I wanted him to simply invest in this idea, give me a bunch of money, and help me make it happen. So when I sat down with him and I started talking about my business, I started asking questions like, okay, so how can I find the customers? How can I get the support? How can I get the marketing? How can I do the distribution? How can I build the products? How can I? And he stopped me and he said, I can tell you're going to start a really small company. And I was like, what? No, that's not what I'm here to do. I'm going to create something big. And he goes, no, you're going to start something small. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he says, well, I can tell because you're asking selfish questions.
Yeah.
I said, what do you mean by that? And he says, you're asking questions, how can I, how should I, how will I, blah, 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 I. And he says, if you want to start something big, you've got to ask a different question. You've got to ask the question, who? Who can help me? Who can open the doors? Who can help me see possibilities? Who can do this? Who can do that? And the truth of the matter is, if you look at all big things that have ever been accomplished in the history of the world, including my movies, it's always been by a committee or a group of people. And even those that win Olympic medals and those that, win Academy Awards or whatever, it's always a group of individuals. And so right. I think one of the big things that we need to recognize when it comes to like how thoughts become things, we need to understand that even your own life, even the great things that you're going to achieve are always done with the support of individuals as a group, as a team, never you by yourself. Because the minute you say it's you by yourself, number one, you're not accepting any kind of teaching or support or opportunities to open greater possibilities. And if you want to expand what you have, you must first start by expanding who you are, right?
It's so true. I mean, you've made so many amazing points here in just the last 5 minutes that I'd love to be able to speak to. But yeah, it really,
We'll come back another time.
no, it really,
We'll go deep if you want.
it really is about attracting the right people through, your thoughts,
True.
are need to be about attracting the right people and surrounding yourself with the right team of people. And I loved what you said about, if you want to attract bigger things, you need to think about who rather than how can I, and
Yeah.
how can I
I
do
think
this? You need to be
that's
thinking about
really,
who.
yeah, that's really the point too, because here's the deal. When we say if it's meant to be, it's up to me, all of a
Hmm.
sudden we start getting really freaked out, because the truth is, let's say, for example, if you've never built a big, massive company before, or you've never, again, even using the example of a gold medal, you've never won a gold medal before. And if you think, if it's meant to be, it's up to me, your brain starts telling you, you're really not capable of doing this. You might as well quit right now. Because the
Hmm.
truth is that every thought, and I guess this is an interesting segue. A lot of people think, how can I control my negative thinking? How can I overcome, like you said in the beginning, my fear and stuff? Well, the truth of the matter is fear really grows when we think it's up to us. When we think that we are the solution and we have to come up with everything, then it's easy to get freaked out. But one thing that we don't recognize is that all thoughts actually arrive in a duality. So there's a positive and a negative to every thought. Let's take this idea of that you want to grow a business, right? You have a thought that says right away, hey, I can do this really cool business idea. You get excited and you're like, wow, I'm going to do this because this is going to be cool. Everybody's going to support it, blah, blah, blah. But as those thoughts are in your mind, right behind it come the other thoughts that say you're not good enough, you've never done this, you've never had the experience, etc. And those thoughts kind of descend, if you will, into your programming or into your
Hmm.
current environment. And if right now you have programming that's been supportive up until now, or people that are in your life that say, yes, you can do this, etc., that positive version of the thought, or the positive side of the thought, will receive more power. But if everything in your life has been non-supportive and you haven't ever had any kind of support mechanisms in place, obviously the negative side will receive strength. And so it's so important. People ask, what's the number one principle of how thoughts become things? Well, it's to have supportive influences, so that when those thoughts arrive, they gain the power, right? Because realistically, all of our thoughts are responsive and reactive. They respond to stimulus, right? And so if we have positive things in our life that add to that stimulus, it will give us the strength that we need to make things happen.
Yes. No, it makes so much sense. And, I've always thought about when I think about law of attraction, I think about what it is that you are attracting. It's not like you think about something and then boom, the thing just arrives on your front door. There's a process that you're going through ultimately that causes that to happen. But that process always connects back to another person. You always need another person. You need a buyer, you need a partner, you need somebody to work for you, you need somebody to
Creation
sell
doesn't
something
happen in a
to.
vacuum.
It
Creation
doesn't
doesn't
happen
happen.
inside your own self.
Yeah.
It happens, with people. It's
Yeah.
people that ultimately
Well,
bring
what's
things
also
into.
interesting about that is I just finished actually writing a book, which we give away when people get the movie, called The
Hmm.
Truth About Attracting Money or
Hmm.
Manifesting Money.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I think, films like The Secret maybe didn't convey in a way that was easy for people to understand, is many people think that if I just sit on my couch, meditate a bit, all of a sudden, boom, the lottery wins and I get it all. Or the doorbell rings and there's the guy with the check or whatever, right? But
Yeah.
the truth of the matter is if you think about it like this, like let's use the example of the Ferrari, okay? Let's say that you want a Ferrari to arrive at your house, okay? Whatever you want, that's the Ferrari, okay? And the truth is you've got to lay down the road or have a mechanism for the Ferrari to pull into your driveway. If you don't have the road leading from that to you, it's never going to be able to arrive. So let's say,
True.
for example, you do want to attract something like money into your life. Well, my question would be, what are the mechanisms that you have that could generate money? Because if you
Hmm.
don't set some of those things up through, by the way, I'm going to maybe dispel a rumor here. A lot of gurus right now are talking about the importance of massive action. Wake up early, stay up late, grind, hustle, do all these things. But the problem is they're not telling you what to do. So to me, that tells me that they don't know the answer themselves. They're just trying to keep you busy so that they can baffle you with BS so that you're not going to ask the real questions. The truth is
Yeah.
I don't want my students, I don't want you to take massive action. I don't. What I want you to do is take deliberate action, because there are
Deliberate.
certain things that are going to get results and there are certain things that are going to waste your time. Productivity isn't doing more. Productivity is often doing less and keeping things coming in at the same flow.
I
So how
love
can
it.
you do deliberate action, right?
Yeah. I definitely, yeah, I definitely relate to that, you know, because you can get up at 5 and work until, you know, 8. And, you know, you're not going to get more accomplished during, you know, during that time, you know, toward what it is that you want to attract into your life. You need to, like you said, it needs to be concise. You can take,
Yes.
you know, decisive, concise actions in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing too, is
Just
if you
picking
look
up
at
the
the
phone and calling the right
yeah,
person.
yeah, yeah. Getting someone else to do the work. But and we can talk about that a little bit later. But here's
Yeah.
something interesting that most people don't think about, even as a definition of wealth or abundance. A lot of
Hmm.
people think about the money in the bank. Well, that's
Hmm.
good and that's important. But if you don't have time as part of the equation, you aren't truly abundant. So I'm
Hmm.
not on a mission to make all the money in the world. That's not my mission. I don't want that mission. The mission that I want is to make the money that I need, but also keep my time, right? So I want to keep my time. And, you know, it's kind of funny. You don't know this, but I'm actually a grandpa. I've got 3 grandkids.
Oh my
And
goodness.
yeah,
Congratulations.
and the reason I mention that, not I don't want to be that grandpa that I'm going to start showing you guys all pictures, even though I want to. I'm fighting that urge, right? I'm fighting that urge. But here's the thing that's interesting. One of my best friends, John DeMartini, who you know from The Secret and my movie,
Hmm.
said this once this way. He said, "Everyone is wealthy. It just appears in the form that they value most."
Hmm.
And so here's the deal: is wealth again, therefore, is not just about money. It's about accumulating abundance in all areas of your life. Do you get to spend time with those you love? Do you get to go where you love? Do you do the things that you love? Do you get to, you know, have the experiences that you love? Can you bless the lives of others that you love? And if the answer is no, I'm just making money, well, you know what? You're out of balance. You're incomplete, right?
And time is one of those assets that's irreplaceable. I mean, once the
100%.
time has ticked away, it's gone forever. You can replace money. You can lose all your money and you can make it back again, but you cannot ever get back your time. And so it is super, it's to me, it's actually the most valuable asset that we have, really, is time. So getting into today's topic, because we started talking a little bit about, you know, the pandemic that we've all been
Yep.
dealing with, and, you know, a lot of people out there are, you know, experiencing a lot of fears and anxiety and depression and things like that. So why do you say that people's fears related to, you know, this pandemic is actually creating more havoc than the pandemic
Yeah.
itself?
Yeah. First of all, I think we need to look at what creates our responses. Can I share it? There's 2 things: fear and peer. So it's your fears or your peers that are going to really determine what you decide to take action on, right?
Hmm.
We rise
Hmm.
to the level of those we surround ourselves with, again, whether it's fears or peers. And right now, with what's happening in the pandemic, a lot of people are subscribing to the fear. And fear is a form of imagination. In other words, fear exists where we don't understand the reality, where we don't deliberately create what we want because we're imagining other things. Now, there is a really good segment in our film that I thought was just great, where there's a lady that actually expresses a fear that she has of spiders. Okay. That's a pretty common fear. I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't like those creepy crawlies. I get it.
Right.
But what's
Scorpions.
interesting is her job, funny enough, required that she had to have contact with things in nature, which included spiders.
Yeah.
And she reveals in the movie the thing that takes care of that imagination, right? Because as you can imagine, she was imagining the worst things possible while she was sleeping at night. You know, spiders in her bed, spiders in her ear, spiders in, right, like everywhere, right? Arachnophobia at its all-time exponential high. But the thing that helped her get through that was having a clear understanding of the realities, right? When
Hmm.
we have a fact, it's like the child that's afraid of the dark. When you flick on the light, they're no longer afraid because they can see what's actually there. Now, what's kind of interesting about this, actually, this whole COVID conversation, we've been getting a lot of mail, as you can imagine, based on the movie. People that have seen the movie and found, you know, some of the tools that we've shared in it be very beneficial for them. And I'll never forget, one of my favorite letters I got was from an 11-year-old boy. And he sent me this email that basically said, I've had a lot of fear in my life. He said at school that there were bullies that he used to have to avoid on his way home. He would find a new route home just so they wouldn't catch him. At school, he was also afraid, what if I don't do good? And I don't know what I want to do as a career, and I don't know what the future brings, and I'm not really smart in school, and so I'm really afraid for my future. And, you know, there were all kinds of things he was afraid of. And then he added on top of it, he said, and right now, with what's going on with COVID, I see all the adults, the authority figures that are in my life, and they're afraid.
Right.
And he said that, you know, this conversation right now seems to be so focused on the adults. Nobody's really talking to us kids about what's going on.
Right.
And then he said something which was really profound and important. I think he said, as I watched the film, I found some keys on dealing with fear that now I'm leading my family.
Oh my goodness, that gives me chills.
Yeah. So, you know, I think this just is like I said, we can either succumb to our fears or our peers. And for him, he found strength in the movie and adopted it as a peer. And so one of the things I'm going to say to people who are right now, maybe you're experiencing some financial challenges because maybe your work is shut down because of COVID. Maybe your business, you're self-employed and the doors are shutting because your customers, you haven't been able to reinvent yourself to go out and, you know, serve in a new way or whatever, and things are catastrophe. In fact, it's funny. Not funny, but it's a reality that I notice on the radio and things that there's an increase of divorce lawyers advertising. So maybe even in this COVID, you've had to spend time with people that you thought you loved and realize that it's not the fit that you wanted, right? So there's a lot of changes that are going on right now. And so one of the things that I think is important to recognize is that in this time of COVID, not only is it, you know, a time of maybe challenge, but it's a time of reset and renewing and reevaluation. And if you bring, how should we say, some positive peers into your life, people who can help you see and realign your values to the things that you really, really want, then you're going to come out of this okay. In fact, you're probably going to come out of this better because you've been able to release and let go of the things that have not been serving you, which is something that sometimes, what do they say, in crisis is where the greatest successes happen. Why? Well, because sometimes we get to, it's not that we have to, we get to leave the things that weren't serving us behind.
Yeah, it's so true.
That's the mission we should be on.
Yeah. And well, and also I always find anytime I go through any sort of challenge for me, for whatever, I mean, it's an opportunity for me to like search for more answers, more ideas. And out of that, always out of the darkness, always comes better things. When one door closes, a new one opens. I mean, there's just, you know, I always just am able to see, okay, this, you know, this is just a temporary moment of negativity. What am I supposed to get from this? Like what, you know, new ideas, what innovations, what's going to happen out of this? Because it's always worked that way. And I believe that it can work that way for anyone.
I love that you mentioned that, because one of the things I think that, you know, we often look at, for example, a snake as a scary symbol, right? Like everybody looks at snakes as being scary, but I think it's actually kind of beautiful how it sheds its skin and comes out with something brand new, right? And the truth of the matter is we're all doing that. Our body is always regenerating cells. So you are not the same person today as you were 5 years ago. You're just not even molecularly the same. And so I think we need to embrace that whenever a crisis or a change happens, it's kind of the universe's way of saying, time to let go of the old you, time to find the new and improved you, the better you, the one that is equipped and suited for today. And I think that the thing that maybe is frightening about that is any changes, because we don't really know what that looks like yet. We've not experienced it before. And so sometimes it's just easier to kind of cling to what was rather than to maybe release to what is. And I think that that's a really important idea. And back to that thought that I expressed at the beginning, if you want to expand what you have to expand who you are. And you can't play, if you're like playing the game as it was in 1990 in 2020, you're kind of like Blockbuster Video. You're not going to be around very long. You're not going to be super useful to anybody. And you're going to be trying to share VHS cassettes in a world that's built for downloading, to use an analogy, right? And so I think, you know, one of the things that we need to remember, especially when it comes to manifesting, and this is important, the universe is an echo chamber. And how you show up determines what shows up for you. So if you show up with fear, apprehension, criticism, scarcity, jealousy, competition, any of these negative things, you're going to find that that's what returns. But if you show up with boldness, excitement, celebration, anticipation of good things, enthusiasm, and all the other positivity, good things are going to show up for you. And it's important to remember that you can never attract any form of abundance if you've got one foot in abundance and one foot in scarcity. You need to be all in. You can't be saying, I want great, great things and I want to be wealthy, etc., but poo-poo on the wealthy people. No, you've got to find a sense of collaboration. You've got to find a way to kind of tap into the powers that brings that kind of abundance. And the truth of the matter is, you know, I think this is really interesting because I've been able to create a lot of abundance in my own life. But what I've noticed is when I was on the flip side of that, as a young man, sometimes I would be scarcity minded and I would be somewhat jealous. But the thing that was interesting is I noticed that jealous also keep those in a position of abundance from helping me.
Yeah.
Because they could sense that I had a very selfish and greedy perspective. But the moment that I kind of let that jealousy go and I celebrated goodness wherever I could find it, all of a sudden goodness was willing to help me. And, you know, the funny thing about that is the more that I started surrounding myself with talking about money and wealthy people and successful people, the more that I found that actually my assumptions were completely incorrect. They are the most giving and kind people that I've ever met. I've got friends now that are multi-billionaires who quite frankly are basically willing to, at a second's notice, drop whatever they're doing to help and to support me and to open doors for me. But the one thing that they won't support, and this is, by the way, another thing that I think is, you know, a lot of the gurus of today have incorrect. They teach fake it till you make it.
Right.
But you know what that is? That's a sense of fraud.
Yeah.
That's a sense of dishonesty. And I've met billionaires who've observed people who are faking it till you make it. And I've literally heard them say, ooh, I couldn't help that person because that would affect my reputation. So rather than fake it till you make it, be sincere, be authentic. Don't be afraid to own who you are and what you've got going on right now. And recognize it's okay to not have it all figured out before you get started. Top achievers are not perfectionists, they're improvisers. And it's okay to kind of muddle your way through a few things until you've got it figured out. But if you represent yourself, if you represent yourself as already perfect, most people are like, oh, yeah, that's kind of offensive. That's like the teacher's pet, the kid who's the brown noser. We don't want to be associated with that guy. We want those that are sincere. And as I personally have said to, you know, these high level people, you know, I want to be where you are. But I also am ready to learn. They've been ready to teach. And so they want a willing student. They want people that they can pass on their legacy to. And they're delighted to do so when you approach it with sincerity.
Yeah. You know, and you bring up a really good point. So if a person is in, because we've covered a lot. So, you know, if a person's in that negative place and they realize that they're okay, I've got a lot of fears and I've got a lot of lack and I've got a lot of abundance issues, but I want to get from here to here, you know, so, but again, you don't want to like continue to recreate that. And so how does a person get away from that fake it till you make it, you know, and be authentic, but just, you know, think and vibrate and be in the way that they need to be in order to create that, the place where they're going? Like, how do you balance, how does a person balance that? That's one of the things that, I mean, you know, I understand, you know, but maybe you can articulate it for people a little bit better.
Well, I think probably one of the biggest things that people forget is that our thoughts, again, are reactionary. Right? We respond to our environment, we respond to the individuals around us, and we respond to what's going on around us. And I think one of the reasons why many people fall into negativity and depression comes down to a saying that Socrates once said. Socrates said that we are teleological beings, which means that we find our happiness through progress. So when we see ourselves, even little things, making progress, we feel better about ourselves. And so one of the first things that we really need to understand is that our emotion, actually William James, the psychologist, said this, emotion comes from motion. When we are in motion, the word even comes from that, the root. And so the truth is if you're not feeling great, sometimes you got to even get moving, even if you don't feel like it. Right? You need to get up even if you don't feel like it. And you need to do something that creates a little bit of momentum. You see, momentum is always more important than motivation because motivation is based on what you feel. I'll do it if I feel like it, if I feel excited or motivated. But if I don't, I'll stay put.
Mm-hmm.
The true top achievers are people who really take control of their life, get started even when they don't feel like it. Now, so that's step number one. But I think an important part of this step is to start surrounding yourself with people who do help you. Because the truth of the matter is if you're starting from a place of depression, let's just be totally honest, sometimes your feelings of self-worth and self-confidence and so forth are sometimes a little lacking, or even fragile if you do have them at all. But if we surround ourselves with people that believe in us and that expect great things of us and that, really tell us, listen, you can do this, and we feel that. They don't even always have to say it. We just feel it. We rise to the standards of and expectations of our peers. We always do. Now, on the negative side, you remember when you were in high school, your mom said, be careful of the friends you hang out with. You'll become just like them.
Yes.
The truth is there's a positive spin to that too.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we start hanging out with people and I'm not even talking people. So again, if you're sitting somewhere in, I don't know, in the middle of Kenya somewhere, and you've got no real big success people that you can tune into and dial into, nowadays we're so fortunate that we've not only got books, but we've got the internet, and we've got opportunities to connect with people in so many ways. So start bringing positivity into your life, start bringing that inspiration into your life, and then get moving with it. And like I said, the universe is an echo chamber. So if it sees that you're making the effort to receive, it's going to give you more. It's going to open possibilities, right? And
it does.
here's the thing that I've noticed is the universe responds to your commitment, right? Meaning if you say, I'm totally all in, it says, I'm totally all in. And it starts feeding you this as fast as you're able to receive it. But again, if you've got one foot kind of out the door and one foot in the door, and you say, well, I'm going to give it a try. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it wasn't meant to be. Well, the universe is going to say, well, you know what? There's probably other people who are deserving of this gift, so I'm going to go there.
Right.
So we need to make ourselves totally available and show we're totally committed. And sometimes that requires a leap of faith. But one of my favorite quotes of all time comes from a Zen proverb, and it says, leap, and the net will appear. And so a lot of times, that's really what the universe is wanting to see is, are you prepared to invest yourself in this? Are you prepared to take that leap of faith, right?
Absolutely. I was just looking for this quote here. It's one of my favorite quotes, and it's actually in my book. Until one is committed, there's hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there's one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. At the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. And I actually cut the quote off a little short. It kind of goes on to say that, all these things that wouldn't have ordinarily been able to happen out just from, making the decision, making that commitment. And so I believe in that so much. I mean, it really is all about, and it's not even so much that how the action is that important. When I first became a hypnotherapist and I took advice for how to, market my business and find new clients, and he says, what you got to do is you got to get a good pair of shoes. You got to walk up and down the street and hand out your brochure to, every business, and tell them what you do and give them a free session and blah, blah, blah. And so I did this, and not a thing came out of that particular action, but out of the blue, for whatever reason, even though it wasn't happening before, people started picking the phone, and this is going to date myself, and telling me that they found me from my Yellow Pages ads, and 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 so it's the momentum, it's the energy, what the commitment, what you're putting out there, your intention, and it doesn't matter what you're doing. You just got to create that energy and that momentum and that energy in motion.
Yes. Well, just two maybe quick thoughts to share in conclusion as we kind of get ready to wrap things up. One, I love that you pointed that out. And I think that that's really, really a cool idea. I know that even for myself, I've started doing something, and in the process of that, the universe has inspired me of either a better thing or a different thing or the next thing to do. So we need to be in motion. It's kind of like a train, right? We can't take the next turn on the track unless the train's already rolling somewhere. So we need to get started with that. And I think the next thing that is maybe just a good thing to kind of finish up on today is that vision isn't just about what you see, right? So most people lean on, hey, if I can't see it, I can't do it, and so forth. but vision is actually more about what you believe, which comes from your heart. And so
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes it is better to act from a place of intuition and what we feel will be the right answer than to simply operate on the logistical things that we can pinpoint. And the truth of the matter is where do our biggest regrets come from in life? It comes from when we know something in our heart and we don't take action on it, right?
Oh
We
my
very
goodness,
seldom
yes.
have regrets from things that we see that we didn't do, but it's the things that we felt, right? I should have talked to that person. I should have done this. I should have felt this. I should have gone there. These are the things that really make a difference. So yeah, it's been great being with your listeners today. I'm happy to support you and come back at any time, and maybe we can even get you some of the other speakers from the film.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. You're reading my mind. Yes, I would
Let's
love
do it.
that. I would add, thank you so much for all. And I am definitely going to watch your movie. And I want to just remind our listeners one more time to, go and watch the movie, How Thoughts Become Things. You can go there to the website, howthoughtsbecomethings.com, and you can learn more about how to change your life through the law of attraction. It has been amazing having you on my show. I'm just delighted. We could just go on for hours and hours, and so maybe I will have you back. And of course, I'd love to have some of your friends join the show as well. So thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me. And I left my email in the chat. Look forward to connecting again soon.
Yes, definitely. You too.